Are you kidding me? Today, another day. It's Tuesday, and what do we do on Tuesdays? At 3:45 Mountain Time, it is breaking news that we cover to make sure that you don't break the bank. So let's get to it first and foremost. Let's talk, first of all, you know how we've been talking basically over the last year about buy now, pay later, right? The Affirm, which is one of the big, there's three really big firms that do buy now, pay later, and it basically they just injected this model into every one of the banks, all the big purchasing purchasing organizations, the PayPal's and the Amazons of the world all have these buy now, pay laters for equal monthly payments. It's so funny. And I love, now I'm going to say this, and somebody's may call me out on it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Affirm stock fell 13% last Thursday after the buy now, pay later made announcements to their stockholders that delinquencies are on the rise. Customers are failing to pay those 3 to 4, 5, 6 monthly payments. Now, they're saying the CEO is making it about the economy, when I'm going to tell you that I believe to some significant degree that all Affirm and these other Klarna and these other groups have done is given an additional way for consumers who are not educated borrowers, don't know how the game is played, don't know the principles of fundability. They don't know any of this stuff. You're taking raw consumers, not savvy borrowers, raw consumers, and giving another way to add more debt to their balance sheets, as it were. So they're carrying their so let's say that the average borrower has 32% balances across all their revolving accounts. That's one of the more recent numbers that have come out, and 32%. And then somebody says buy now, pay later, where there's no interest being charged to the buyer, right? The consumer. Now they're just stacking it up and making an additional debt to their credit card debt. And it's sexier debt because they don't pay interest on it. And so now the CEO is saying the economy is more than likely in the beginning stage of a downturn, the CEO says, because he's talking about lower earnings, when what we're doing is we're just piling more debt onto unsophisticated borrowers. Now, it's not the borrower's fault necessarily, because all of our fundability training is not ubiquitous and easily available yet, because we're still creating market share and creating critical mass in getting this training out there. But I'm just calling it like I see it. And the delinquencies are not, I'm not going to put these delinquencies as the fault of the economy yet. I'm putting it at heaping more debt onto already overwhelmed or unsophisticated borrowers. Next. Now, this last quarter, in Q2 of 2022, the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, did this massive survey, and because people now, instead of writing the FTC when they have complaints, they're writing the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Well, interestingly enough, that one of the big criteria, or one of the big complaints that consumers have, is atrocious, in quotes, atrocious customer service from banks. Oh, banks are taking a hit on all fronts. Remember, we talked, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've talked about banks being, there's a pinch going on because fintechs like Affirm, fintechs are moving in on the credit card marketplace and creating pressure there, and by the results, borrowers would rather pay higher interest rate then go through a heavy application process. So that's another point to fintechs. But now banks are also being trashed for their customer service, and that's one of the number one complaints from banks or against banks to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Once again, they're just getting beat upon. So I'm excited to be able to. And one of the complaints derives from the bank's lack of clarity in describing the terms and agreements that new borrowers have for new credit cards, or for how to use checking accounts, or the horrible, the NSF charges, right? The overdraft fees that have been being charged and are slowly evaporating from different banks. But I didn't know this thing could happen, right? Is the complaint, and it's being chalked up to the lack of education given by banks to consumers. So, thank you, American Banker, for that one, for that article. There's over 100 complaints per day against the top tier 4 banks for customer service purposes. So there's that one. Aren't we just killing it today? Now, banks are seeing auto loan weakness as an early sign of a slowdown. So there's lack of financing going on because remember, all the big banks create a measure how many new loans by quarter, and they can measure it quarter over quarter, month over month, year over year. And there's been a significant slowdown in auto loan financing from the different banks. So that is kind of a bellwether measurement, the number of sales of autos, because those are big ticket items requiring a forecasting, a significant confidence by auto buyers, by consumers, to finance 5 to 6 years in advance for a new auto loan, when they might say, yeah, it'll only take me a few $100 to fix the one I've got rather than buy a new one. And so hence the slowdown and the rise in interest costs, of course, as a result of the last year's interest hikes from the Fed. So there's more. So auto industry is taking the hit. And then there is a great article about Biden's choice to forgive the first $20,000 of student loans, and there are certain eligible borrowers. But what's happening is the plan would forgive up to $10,000 in student loan debt for borrowers earning $125,000 or less, and $20,000 taken out by lower income Pell Grant recipients. The announcement also put a moratorium on all student loan repayment that's been in effect since 2020. So that would cease at the end of the year and provide new rules for repayment. So they've extended it through the end of 2022 and forgiven $20,000 for low-income Pell Grant recipients and $10,000 for anybody making under $125,000, which is the vast majority of graduates from four-year universities. So that kind of takes us into, for those of you who are watching live and are members of our Funding Hackers Q&A, make sure you join us here in a moment. We'll be doing a deep dive on these subjects and answers to your fundability questions when we go live in our the Funding Hackers private Facebook group and the Zoom that you can find there at pinned to the top. Join us. We will see you in a moment there. For all of the rest of you, we'll see you next Tuesday at 3:45 Mountain Time for a review of what's happening in the markets and how lenders are responding to both inflation and in the case of auto lenders, the slowdown that is being caused by the rise in interest rates. We'll see you next time.